When the skies fill with smoke and communities evacuate, most people run from wildfires. Alex and his co-founders ran towards them with drones. In August 2023, an unprecedented wildfires tore through British Columbia. Aerospace engineer Alex Deslauriers found himself watching water bombers fight a losing battle. When night fell and operations ceased, he asked a question that would change everything.
There is no reason with flight automation, heavy lift drone technology, and all of the technology that is being deployed in the Ukraine related to AI and object recognition, why can we not harness the same technology to suppress fires in a specific gap initially in the overnight hours?
In this episode, I sit down with Alex, co-founder of FireSwarm, who's building drone technology that fights wildfires 24/7, even when human pilots can't fly. His company is bringing together heavy lift drones, AI-powered swarm algorithms, and precision water delivery to transform how we respond to an increasingly burning world. From securing Swedish drone technology to navigating complex regulatory frameworks, this is what happens when homegrown purpose meets aviation expertise in a $200 billion disaster response market.
It's a great problem for a Canadian company to be solving right now.
Welcome to The Capitalist Hippie, the podcast where we challenge the old rules of business to build something better. I'm Marco Pimentel, marketing expert, entrepreneur, and lover of bold, sustainable ideas. Every week, we dive into data-backed insights, groundbreaking ideas, and real-world strategies that help you outthink and outmaneuver the status quo.
It's not every day in life that you're presented with a problem in which you say, okay, you know what? I know the people, I have the resources, and I know how to bring this together to actually solve a problem.
Today, we're diving into how drone swarms, and the people bold enough to build them, could be the unexpected heroes in protecting our forests and keeping communities safe from wildfires. Let's get into it. Alex, thank you so much for joining. This is an interesting one because you just won a $25,000 grant from Shift, which is a portfolio company of Red Brick, which I'm obviously involved in. You had an experience yourself where a wildfire really destroyed a lot personally. And from that, obviously you have a deep experience in the aviation sector, but you built a startup in and around this space. And this market is quite large. And right now, I think a lot of people are worried that, fires and natural disasters, which I think can come as almost a $200 billion market, are just going to get worse. And so, companies and people like you that are working on things to help relieve a lot of stress for people and a lot of damage for people is really exciting. So, and it's such a beautiful mix between purpose and profit. So thank you for joining me, Alex. Can you maybe just kind of walk us through kind of like what happened and what really kind of set off this, this idea to build what you're building?
Thanks for the opportunity. As we all experienced in September, or essentially the summer of 2023, we were going through the worst Canadian wildfire season on record. And as we keep saying, another unprecedented wildfire season. Well, it will keep getting unprecedented for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. Through global warming and the amount of lack of humidity in their forests and the amount of fuel available, the conclusion is quite simple. So what we experienced during the summer months of 2023 was a wildfire that started quite small through lightning strikes in the Gun Lake area. And for weeks, we could see CL-415 water bombers and fire bosses coming in quick succession to suppress fires in an area that was inaccessible to ground crews. And we saw this fire grow and grow. And during the nighttime hours, every work that was done during the day would essentially be undone. And then the fire simply kept growing during the day. And then what we could see is nighttime suppression was obviously not done because it is extremely costly and dangerous activity. And as an aerospace engineer, I was between contracts and was wondering a little bit what to do with all this energy. In this one night of August 18th, which we all remember in the Okanagan and in BC in general, this cold front came through, massive winds from the northwest. And this is where we had embers flying across Lake Okanagan, almost lighting the entire city of Kelowna on fire.
This is where meaningful innovation happens, at the intersection of personal experience and professional expertise. When founders witness a problem they're uniquely qualified to solve, it creates a sense of responsibility. The most compelling startups aren't built on market size alone. They're built on this kind of visceral understanding of what's broken and why it matters.
From that, I said there is no reason with flight automation, heavy lift drone technology, and all of the technology that is being deployed in the Ukraine related to AI and object recognition to essentially explode bombs on machinery. Why can we not harness the same technology to suppress fires in a specific gap initially in the overnight hours?
Yeah, and I guess that connection and your experience probably helped to lead you to that, because I'm thinking about just, somebody that sees this, you get really frustrated, you potentially experience some sort of loss, or your way of life has changed, but that doesn't usually mean that people get connected to starting a business in that space. So was it the unique connection of your experience and kind of what you were doing that just led you to be like, let's change this? And what were those first steps that you took?
So it's not every day in life that you're presented with a problem in which you say, okay, you know what? I know the people, I have the resources, and I know how to bring this together to actually solve a problem. So it was a really unique set of circumstances that brought passion for search and rescue, emergency response, aviation, maintenance engineering, and drone technology that I did not know so much about, but I knew exactly who to bring into the company.
Yeah. So what was your first idea then, like on kind of pen and paper for FireSwarm? Like what was the big kind of, here's what we're going to build and here's what we're going to kind of go after in the market?
So it was really reading a lot about swarm technology that got me to thinking, well, if all of these swarm technology and AI and machine learning is being brought to bear to solve problems such as dropping munitions on people, there is no reason why this technology cannot be repurposed. When you're building a company, and this is the first company that I built, but I've been in startups all my life, in and around startups. So when you're looking at a problem, you don't need to solve A to Z. You need to find one specific niche and then bring in the experts around you to help solve the problem. And what's really important, don't just focus on the technology, focus on how to build a beautiful company with a culture of safety and a culture of respect amongst peers, that we're all just moving forward in a direction that's required.
So with drones, and I guess maybe visually understanding is, so you said, okay, we're going to put an amazing team together. We have people that understand this space. Obviously, you have a deep experience both in startups and in aviation. And how did you say we're gonna raise a bunch of money to solve this? Did you say we're going to build out a pilot? Like, how did you get that first kind of off the ground kind of thesis?
Bringing pen to paper was quite challenging. I brought in an expert wildfire fighter who ended up creating the company with me, along with Melanie Bidner, my partner and CMO of the company. The three of us really just scratching our heads are, how are we going to build a company and essentially integrate technology to solve this problem? And 2 weeks after I said, you know what, guys, like there has to be a way. David, why don't we fly down to Las Vegas at the UAV show and start talking to people and see if this idea even makes any sense? 2 weeks later, we were at Caesar's Palace, and we were just talking to a lot of people, from regulatory to heavy lift drone manufacturers, AI, machine learning, and just learning as much as we could about the space. And we figured out soon enough that we do not need to build our own drone. We do not need to be the firefighters at the edge of the fire. We need to build a technology set that will allow multiple drones to be interconnected in a mesh to pick up water and drop it off. And from there, we started shopping for the best heavy lift drone manufacturer in the world. We found it in Sweden. It was a startup as well, ACC Innovations. They had been building a quadcopter able to lift 350 kilograms on a jet engine.
This decision is more strategic than it actually might appear. Instead of the classic founder trap of building everything from scratch, FireSwarm identified their true value add, the software and integration layer. By partnering for hardware, they've accelerated their timeline by years while focusing resources on their unique IP. That's the difference between founders who build products and founders who build scalable companies.
They had been working on this machine for years, and we said, guys, we want to bring your technology to market for wildfire suppression. And after a number of trips to Sweden, they said, okay, FireSwarm, you are now our exclusive distributor in America. Sell the drone and bring it to North America to do whatever it is that you can, but obviously wildfire fighting being our initial point into the market.
Yeah. And so, as you kind of mentioned during the beginning, wildfires are obviously getting worse. The ability to access a lot of wildfires, of course, as well is an issue because they're often started by lightning. And so getting there by ground is difficult. So you have to use helicopters and planes in often kind of dangerous scenarios. And then at nighttime, like you said, it's, nighttime's about half the day. So you can't fight the fires at that time. So there's a lot of kind of disadvantages when you are trying to fight fires that are just going to kind of keep growing. So we know that that's all happening. What's the business side when from my perspective, is it all government? Is it all municipality? Is it a mix between federal and provincial or state? And like how does that company business side work when you're thinking you can put all this together, but are you selling really into a few groups? Like how does that side begin to work?
Let's talk about the layers of regulation and how the market works in Canada, because it's different in the US. So in Canada, you have Transport Canada, which issues Transport Canada regulations, and the regulations are then controlled or operationalized by a group called NAV Canada that regulates the airspace. So the first key that we needed was to get Transport Canada approval to operate these heavy lift drones in wildfire conditions. It took a number of months. 2 weeks ago, we had our launch customer in Ear Falls, Ontario, receive approval from Transport Canada to operate these machines in wildfire airspace. So first check mark. The second check mark that we are now getting is that second level of approval from the different provincial bodies in BC. They're called BC Wildfire Service. In Alberta Wildfire Service, and so on. So every province has their own way of allowing what equipment is allowed to fight a fire. So that's where we're at right now, making sure that we are connected with all the provincial agencies to ensure that these machines will be allowed to be charged by our customers. So this is where the third layer comes in, customer acquisition. So our customers are private firefighting companies, helicopter operators, aircraft operators that want a supplemental tool in their toolbox, and also the massive million-dollar companies that have energy producing assets, stranded assets, that are at risk of wildfires, that need early protection, where there are no helicopters available.
Yeah. And right now, when a fire gets sparked, we're both in British Columbia, Canada, but for reference, let's just say a fire happens in the Okanagan. And immediately, I'm assuming BC Wildfire is the one that's kind of takes lead on that fire. They're going to have their own assets, or are they pretty much contracted out to, X helicopter company? We need 5 helicopters here, and like how does that part work?
So, talking about the contracting vehicle a little bit, in March of every year, there's an RFP that goes out from BC Wildfire that then has helicopter operators bidding on standby rates and hourly rates per region of the province.
What's happening here is textbook market entry strategy for regulated industries. Instead of fighting the existing system, FireSwarm is embedding within it, turning potential competitors into customers and leveraging established contracting vehicles. They're not asking anyone to change how they buy, they're changing what's available to purchase. This approach dramatically reduces friction in a market where relationships and trust are everything.
We, in the years to come, will be one of those, or our customers will be one of those companies bidding for those contracts. So then BC Wildfire, when there's a fire start, let's say outside of Vernon, well away from the city itself, there's a fire report that's noted. BC Wildfire then dispatches usually a helicopter with an initial attack crew to essentially see, can they either repel or come up with a plan to initially attack that fire. And from there, then there's more resources that are brought to bear from coastal aviation with water drops and retardant drops, but those are all dependent on the specifics of that fire. Where we would fit in is our customers would be contracted to come in, let's say at 8 p.m. at night when aircraft are grounded, and be able to continue the firefight all night long while there are no other suppression assets in the area.
So if you're a helicopter company and you got 10 helicopters in Vernon to fight that fire, you now might be able to have 10 drones at nighttime to activate as well. Part of that RFP to then be able to help put that fire out.
Correct. And usually what happens is when there's a massive fire in northern BC, guess what happens to the helicopters in Kelowna? They don't stay in Kelowna. They fly to wherever they're needed. And then when there's a fire start nearby, this is when we get in trouble in a very, very active fire season. There are simply not enough assets to respond.
And is that just cost-wise? Because helicopters are, very, very expensive. Is that the big kind of trade-off here too? Is obviously at nighttime, but with these kind of big commercial drones, you don't have a person operating them per se in kind of bum in seat, but cost and maintenance is just very different profile that you could have, 2, 3, 4, 10 times the amount of drones versus helicopters.
Yeah, so there's a number of aspects to consider. Obviously, the cost of the machines for a helicopter is a massive, massive asset. Also, operating a helicopter, you need pilots that are highly trained, and training pilots is extremely expensive. Plus, there is a massive lack of pilots availability right now in Canada, and the problem is only getting worse. So you compound that with the sheer availability, which can be really, really minimal in a very heavy fire season. And then you add to that the fact that even if you have enough pilots, they run out of hours of duty time, that they call it, to actually be able to sit in those seats.
Yeah, and fires don't sleep.
And if you compare that to the cost of training a drone pilot to oversee a swarm algorithm that is automatically flying these machines to pick up water and drop it off, the savings are absolutely massive. We're not talking about a highly trained helicopter pilot. We're talking about a technician essentially that is overseeing a swarm algorithm.
And let's talk a little bit about drone and the technology there. So you were able to secure the rights to bring this drone to North America for distribution. Now, the software side, this kind of swarm algorithm, being able to use all that, because you have to layer in fire data and aviation data, and was that all built as part of these large ones, or did you have to build that technology to work with the hardware?
We have focused the attention of ACC Innovation, the drone manufacturer, to build the best drone that they can to operate in adverse conditions. What we bring to the table as FireSwarm is not only the software that sits on the control vehicle, the truck, that is essentially going to draw out the flight plans for pick up water and drop it off, but also the companion computer that is that edge computing device sitting on the drone itself that is able to see specific fire conditions and decide when to release water on fires.
Yeah, so you're building, and you're doing that with inside your team. This all sounds also very expensive to do this too. So how did you kick off that from like a funding perspective?
Fundraising is obviously, as we know, is a very, very complex and difficult undertaking that takes probably well over half my time for the past 2 years now. And that's okay. It's what we're doing is very complex. We are bringing in the best minds in the world to solve this problem, but it also means that investors are very shy. That from a friends and family point of view, we had some amazing humans that came in and said, absolutely, I believe this is the next stage in aviation. But when it comes to trying to convince a venture capital firm to come in and put in $3 million into a company like ours that has a hardware play based on a company in Sweden that is developing the drone, we are creating our software in-house. We are also tied to, our success is tied to our customers being able to find the money to purchase these assets and also secure government contracts.
This is the paradox of venture capital today. The harder the problem, often the harder the fundraise. We've optimized our funding systems for software margins and quick scaling, not for complex solutions to wicked problems. But here's what's changing. As climate impacts accelerate, capital is starting to recognize that the biggest returns might come from solving exactly these kinds of multi-layered challenges.
The problem is just compounded by the sheer number of moving pieces in our business model, which is, it's okay. I get why it's hard to raise money for this, but sometimes I'm like, why hasn't anybody done this before? Well, that's why, because this is an extremely multifaceted problem to solve.
But, I think we need people solving these hard problems, and even though, it takes time and ingenuity to do that. So, as you bring this kind of to market, as you think, I'd love to just explore the theoretical, like how would this actually, play out in terms of what do you see potential outcomes of this being, where this replaces a certain type of other option. And, like I just watched your video. I'm like, oh, we should just have these everywhere. I just want to see these. Like, I think everybody, like having this would be great. But have you done any projections? Like, are you seeing a huge cost saving that when you go to the market? What's that kind of big hook that you're able to go to market with?
So let's talk about that big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah.
Right. Where we want to be. And from there, how do we reverse engineer? How do we get there? We as a team, we want these machines to be pre-positioned in high risk areas when there is the possibility of wildfires to be available essentially across the country, across the US. When the fire season switches from north to south, most of these machines are then sent down to Chile and Argentina and Australia and wherever else to operate down there, which is exactly the model used by Coulson Aviation and also by Conair. Right? So that model is not a tough one to understand, and especially because the cost of these assets is per kilogram of water carried is so much lower than that of a helicopter. And plus you add in and you don't have pilots at risk. and you can fly at night. You can train locally available resources in a fire department to be able to operate these machines. So the number of advantages that really play in here with, as we know, the increase in frequency of wildfires, it's just an absolute no-brainer that this will be part of the arsenal in the decades to come.
And the size of these, so when you say that the cost of the helicopter by a kilogram of water dropped is substantially lower, are these drones, you said, I think it was 350 kilograms that they can carry. Like what does a helicopter carry, or what is would that be? I'm assuming that's the equivalent. It's not the big water, it's not the water bombers that you're really kind of trying to replace. It's more the helicopter precision drops. Is that correct?
We shouldn't talk about replacement. We should really talk about an addition to the fleet. So let's say an A-Star helicopter, very well-known small helicopter able to carry 1,000 kilograms of water. You compare that to 3 of our drones, each able to carry 350. You're in the ballpark for the same amount of water carried to a fire per hour, because the cruise speed with the Bambi bucket is pretty much equivalent to that of a helicopter. The advantage, though, is obviously, as we talked about, no pilot, flight 24/7 in very similar conditions than a helicopter because they are jet engine powered. Now, you add to that the operating cost of these machines is extremely low compared to that of a helicopter, because helicopters are built to carry humans. These machines are built to carry loads. We don't need to certify them to a level of requiring what's called a certificate of airworthiness, which is what's required to carry humans in Canada. That is not what's required here, which is why we were able to move so quickly with Transport Canada, because they see that there is no future in which these machines, the way they're built now, will carry humans.
Yeah. And you said that these are being used kind of already, these type of drones, these sizes of drones, obviously in a war scenario. So why not leverage them? And the technology on the software side, the ability to leverage AI, how important is that for you to be able to deploy the software and hardware solution?
If you take the hardware from Sweden currently and you deploy it in Canada to fight a wildfire, you're needing a pilot on the ground to have joysticks and make sure that it's deciding exactly when to pick up water, drop it off. And that type of interaction can be engineered out through the swarm algorithm that will understand which altitude do we hover over a lake, how long do we wait, when we pull up, when is the Bambi bucket full, how then do we get to a certain altitude and go towards a fire, what routes are we following based on terrain, weather, fire fronts, all of that. That is all variables that are essentially trainable for an AI.
So it allows the software and the development and the learning to exponentially speed up so that you can deploy multiple drones at a time with a single technician.
And that is the key to the innovation. That is the key of what we're bringing. And what's really exciting is the fact that we are the first to market to be collecting data on wildfires using our own fire mission kit and our swarm algorithm to then reinforce the machine learning that will just make the solution better and better over time.
What's particularly smart here is the flywheel effect. Each deployment improves the algorithm, which improves performance, which leads to more deployments. It's not just about fighting fires today, it's about creating an intelligence layer that makes future response more effective. The real product isn't the drone, it's the accumulated knowledge of how to fight fires autonomously.
So people say, well, what about competition as they come through the door with the next bigger drones? I go, that's great. Let's partner with those bigger drones, because with the amount of data we will have had accumulated over time, how would a competitor come in with a better ChatGPT equivalent to what we're doing? I just don't know how that would work.
Yeah, that's kind of the Tesla argument right now around self-driving cars, is they've had Tesla on the road collecting all this data for years and years by all these people driving their cars, and so it's going to be very hard to to compete with robotaxi on even sure, Wave is doing a great job, but robotaxi's cost is probably going to be lower because they had this data from years and years and years and be able to roll that out.
And that's the key, right? I mean, coming up with simulated data to test a swarm algorithm is one thing. To be using real data collected from the field is night and day.
So let's talk a little bit about the field and the next steps of starting to get these. You've checked mark some of the regulations, and I think you mentioned there's in Ontario you're getting a little bit further along. When do you, I guess, anticipate kind of the first potential drone liftoff to start to see how effective this might be?
So we executed a very successful training exercise with the Kelowna Fire Department in late May, top of Knox Mountain, with smaller drones able to carry 10 pounds of water. Obviously, it can't do real damage to a wildfire with 10 pounds of water, but the concept was to have 3 machines flying in a swarm, picking up water and dropping it off on a small campfire, and also transporting water from one water tender to a forward deployed pumpkin tank, essentially a water container that's deployed in the field. So that went extremely well. We have a number of these paid pilot projects that are coming up as well to prove the concept to the organizations. What happened 2 weeks ago, we were in Linköping, Sweden with our 3 technicians from the company, integrating our software and our sensors on the Thunder Wasp machine in Linköping. And within a few days, the system integration worked flawlessly, obviously with a lot of preparation. And we were having the machine picking up water autonomously, flying from A to B and dropping it off autonomously in a return trip. What that brings us to next is the machine arriving in Ear Falls, Ontario in the fall, where we will then have these machines contracted on paid pilot projects to test out and prove out the concept for the various organizations that we're currently working with on the final throes of proposals to have this machine executing water drops in early or in late 2025 into 2026.
And is that the plan right now, is to scale across the regulatory hurdles and getting all the pilots working across in Canada first and then go down into the US, or doing that in tandem?
We are starting Canada first because the regulations and our regulator and the fact that we're able to do all the testing here locally is, and it's a great problem for a Canadian company to be solving right now.
Yeah. We have a lot of forest fires in Canada.
And the federal government is very keen, as you know, recently, having Canadian innovation be built in Canada so that it's not a siphon to the US as soon as it gets to a certain TRL.
Yeah.
So we're very excited about Canada first. We are most likely, we're looking into the US a little bit, but most likely it's the Southern Hemisphere. So Australia, Chile, Argentina, and Peru. Those are the main countries that we're looking at. Plus, there's that dual that hemisphere split, which we need to keep working on, right? So during wildfire season here, it's innovation season in Chile. During wildfire season in Chile, it's innovation season in Canada. So we can play both hemispheres that way.
Yeah, and so you're a hardware software company. Companies are going to buy your products to integrate it into theirs. How do you bridge the financing gap on this too? Like, is there a financing play within your business, or is there a financing partner that you look to work at to help to get these into the organizations that you need them to say yes to?
So our customers are purchasing the machines. We are installing the fire mission kits on the machines, and we're passing that cost on and making a tiny little profit on that. But really where we're making money in the company will actually be the swarm algorithm regular revenue that we get yearly, and also providing a fleet management solution so that our customers don't need to set up an entire airline maintenance repair organization. We will do that for you. Plus, we get to collect all the data, meaning return on investment or return on experience gets a lot better for our customers because we're aggregating data from multiple customers and providing reliability data to them with customized maintenance programs. There's a huge advantage for our customers there. Now, when it comes to financing, Our company does not need a massive capital influx, and we're talking about in the 3 to 4 million Canadian to really get to an MVP. And after that, we really believe that our customers will be able to find the money to purchase these assets as reliability of these machines gets proven over time. But right now, it's obviously the crux of getting these first machines into Canada so that we can get them fighting fires.
Yeah, yeah. But I guess you make a really strong point, though, is that your customers are already accustomed to buying technology and aviation already. So it's not changing their buying cycles, just changing an option for them to buy, to add, to be actually potentially even more competitive as well as the, in the RFP process.
And as well, they already have the relationship with the wildfire agencies. So instead of us trying to create those relationships, we're working with a B2B move that allows our customers to succeed.
Yeah, so they already have those relationships and those customers. So you're kind of like B2B2B.
That's right, B2B2G or whatever, yeah.
I love the hard problems in this space. There is a lot of right now, like he says, it's hard to get funding. It's hard to get that kind of little bit of that movement. There's uniqueness to what you're doing. But in general, funding is a little bit more difficult right now. And I think that's, probably to do with a mix of AI, probably to do with what's happening south of the border in terms of just kind of politics and, you name it. You add all these kind of things together. But you jumped in, with 2 feet to solve a really, really big problem. I guess the question would be just like, what would you suggest right now for other, entrepreneurs that are thinking about, maybe not just the wildfire or the disaster response space, but, the spaces where it does take a little bit of ingenuity, grit, and a lot of hard work to pull off?
So a lot of mentors of mine have said, Alex, you absolutely need your prototype to be able to solve a problem so that you can charge your customers. Well, that's not feasible in what we're doing. But what is required and what I would really recommend to anybody trying to get in these types of spaces is make sure that you are aligned with a dual use case that is applicable for emergency response and for D&D and national defense. Because the amount of money that will be available over the next decade for military innovation that can cross over into disaster response and wildfire is where we all need to be. We need to have our feet in both pots so that we can actually move forward. And nobody in my company, in our company, wants to, be dropping bombs on people, but from a logistics transfer for northern soldiers being able to bring goods from A to B in the Arctic that are working in adverse conditions, absolutely.
Yeah, so being able to have the different type of optionality for the product to justify the cost and open up into a new category of financing and spending, which changes a lot of things. And for a customer thinking about cost-wise, I guess the total cost, though, are you finding that, I guess, one, you're providing a solution, at least on the wildfire side, where it's at nighttime, so that's not even an option today. So you're not really competing in that space. But what does, what is it a 20% savings if you effectively have a swarm? Is it 50%? Is it 75%? And this is future thinking, 3 to 5 years, costs are figured out, technology is working as they expect.
So one slight correction, there are programs in BC right now where night vision goggles are being used for nighttime suppression. Helicopter pilots are getting on board with that concept, but the amount of training and obviously the risk to flight crews is quite high. So that's where we believe that if you start comparing nighttime vision helicopters where you need 2 pilots on board with specialized machines and equipment compared to a swarm of 3 machines that can be putting fire at a fraction of the cost, that's really where we see the massive cost saving.
Fire doesn't sleep, and soon our response to it won't have to either. What FireSwarm is building isn't just a product, it's a missing piece in our climate adaptation strategy. By creating autonomous drone systems that can fight fires through the night, they're not replacing existing firefighting assets, but extending their capabilities when they matter most. The brilliance in their approach isn't just technological, it's strategic. Rather than trying to disrupt established firefighting agencies, they're empowering existing helicopter operators and private firefighting companies with tools that make them more competitive and effective. This is how meaningful innovation happens, not by trying to solve everything at once, but finding the precise gaps where technology and regulation and market need converge. Thanks for listening to The Capitalist Hippie. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who sees opportunity in our most urgent challenges. Talk soon.